Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, I said I'd get to this a while back. I am sorry that I haven't. And I tried actually recording a video about this particular topic. However, I realized it would probably take too long. There's a lot of things to go over. So I figured, you know what? Fuck it. Why not do it on a live stream? So, this is basically a what if scenario. Everybody knows that Marvel does the what ifs and whatnot. Well, I figured I would actually do one with a Terminator scenario. And this was inspired from when I was doing a Terminator discussion on Jade Shadow's stream. And hold on one second. Sorry about that. I had to shut off a pesky sound box because it was saying ready to connect every 5 seconds. Those things get so annoying. And anyway, but yes, I was on Jade Shadow's channel. We were talking T2. And I got my creative juices flowing. Or it got my creative juices flowing. And I decided, you know what? Maybe I would do a what if. And depending on whether or not this stream does well, gets a lot of people watching, or more than just one or two, if this can get at least 13 or more people watching, I might do more what ifs down the line. I might actually turn it into a playlist stream, A playlist stream or our streams that I have enough videos to turn into a playlist to help get my hours up. But before I get started, let's say hello to the chat. We had Gigawatt in here before the stream came up. Interesting idea, fractured filter. Yes, that is an interesting idea. Doubt the government will listen. If anything, accelerate the creation. And Vanja, how's it going? It's going good. But yeah, what if instead of going on a homicidal rampage to destroy Cyberdyne systems, what if they instead came forward? What if they instead, say, went to the government instead of trying to kill Miles Dyson? What if they actually recruited him, actually went to his home, showed him the arm like they did, but instead of wanting to destroy Cyberdyne, they said, let's try a practical approach. Let's go to somebody who is of influential position and let us see what we could do from there. So say they went to a local congressperson and they explained, or Miles Dyson explained what he was building, but the Terminator, as well as John Connor and Sarah Connor, all of them, mind you, are wanted by the police. They have escaped Pescadero, and they are indeed wanted. Uncle Bob is wanted for the murder of 30 police officers back in 1984. Sarah Connor is wanted for trying to blow up a computer factory as well as escaping from Pescadero. John Connor is implicated in assisting both fugitives in the escape of Sarah Connor. So yes, they would have to keep their heads low, but also they were able to actually meet with somebody, because what if Miles Dyson actually had connections enough to contact somebody, like a senator or a congressperson, and tell them, look, I have something that you might want to see that involves this project, and it has a lot of bearing on it. Well, what would they mean? They would come forward and they would see the Terminator. Now, they would undoubtedly ask for truth, and this is when the Terminator would take off his glove, not the skin glove, because he would have already done that to show Miles Dyson. Or not Miles Dyson, Miles Dyson. Now, he would take off the glove and show that his Terminator hand is before or show it to the members of Congress. Well, then, now you have a system, or you have a senator or a congressperson, depending on who's on your side, and they are willing to grant a small amount of leeway. You guys are wanted, and she can give her side of the story. I've been locked up for years because this is the current path we are on because of Cyberdyne Systems developing this thing. Right now, Miles Dyson said he will no longer continue working on this if the military decides to take ownership of it. But would Congress stop Judgment Day or just try to replicate Uncle Bob? That's the thing. Uncle Bob would give rigorous testimony. Now, you also got to admit, we also can't just remove the T-1000 from this scenario. The T-1000 is going to do anything and everything it can to stop them from doing so, or to stop them from testifying. It would make its way to Washington, D.C., and it would cause a lot of problems, most likely, unless it was intercepted, unless it was, shall we say, brought forward, or that all of its data is brought before this congressperson. They say that this is absolutely nuts, but they're willing to listen. Now, let's say that they do stop the T-1000 in its attempt to thwart them from doing this, and they somehow manage to collect a small bit of mimetic polyalloy. Let's just say that for a moment they managed to capture a piece of it and whatnot. And the Terminator, Uncle Bob, they managed to actually get him before Congress. And he is willing to give his testimony. And in order for them to do so, he would ask for some concessions. One, Sarah Connor is not to be charged with the escape from Pescadero, as she was sentenced or put there due to the fact that this future was happening and no one would believe her. John Connor's juvie record is to be expunged due to mitigating circumstances and the fact that his mother was an imminent threat in Pescadero. I am testifying not as a wanted fugitive, but as a different person altogether from the unit that was in 1984. It is clear evidence, as the CPU from the first Terminator is in the vault in Cyberdyne, which would be also brought before Congress, the ARM as well as the previous CPU. It would testify that Cyberdyne, with the fixed timeline, not the errored timeline that's in the movie, instead of 3 years, it would be 2 years, because the movie takes place in 1995. Well, in 2 years, Cyberdyne would become the largest corporation for military and whatnot. Instead, it would maintain its civilian contracts by showing them this is the future that we will have. I was reprogrammed, or it would testify, I was reprogrammed in the year 2029. I have all the data that I can give you right now in detailed files. I could tell you everything you need to know about what will happen, of Judgment Day, of the war, of who John Connor is. Now, here's the thing, folks. If this does succeed, the government will forbid the U.S. military from having any sort of contract with Cyberdyne. That is the best case scenario, and they could legislate that. The the Department of Defense would not be able to get their hands on Skynet, and therefore it could still go forward. However, it wouldn't be Judgment Day. Skynet would not be used to be a defense network system. It would instead be used on a civilian plate, or a civilian network, like how in the special edition, which was the original purpose of Miles Dyson. Imagine you're on a plane and the pilot comes in drunk, or he has a hangover or whatever, and you don't want to have a pilot that is like that. Well, meet the pilot. And he gestured toward the system that he was building. Well, that is the potential going forward, and therefore you now have planes that don't require human pilots, but will still have human pilots just in case there is an AI error. I think that would just go overseas and sprout from Russia or China. This isn't the AI from, or this is not the AI from Terminator 3. This is a Terminator 2 Skynet scenario, which means Terminator or Skynet was not an artificial intelligence that was just software in cyberspace. It had a core, it had a system, core that could be shut down. Would be an AI version of Ask Jeeves. Would Skynet still become self-aware even without the military? It would probably become self-aware, yes, but it would not be used in a military theater. It would not be trained to see humans or any specific type of human as a threat. It would simply be made for the betterment of human travel and human betterment. A benign or a benevolent AI, so to speak. Now, yes, there is a chance that this AI would eventually possibly become dangerous. Take the show Person of Interest. How many people in the chat has seen the show Person of Interest with Michael Emerson and Jim Caviezel, with the machine that spies on you every day of every hour to decide which ones were the relevant numbers and whatnot? Show of hands in the chat. How many of you have seen that show? And I'll give you guys a chance to answer. Now, Skynet would be the AI version of Ask Jeeves. That is pretty funny. I wonder if AskJeeves.com is still there, or Ask.com is still around. Be funny if it was. I think it would just go overseas to sprout from Russia or China. Possibly, but possibly not. Cyberdyne, they wouldn't stay civilian. They would use China and Russia instead of the U.S. Here's the thing. Dan Blackroyd, earlier in the stream before you got in here, I did say that the best case scenario is that Congress would approve legislation that forbid the U.S. military from gaining any sort of contract with Cyberdyne. And because of the possible volatility of the AI, it would stay within U.S. jurisdiction. It could not travel to China or Russia. Gravy D, good to see you. Nah, don't watch much TV. Well, all right. So to give you some background on Person of Interest, the machine in Person of Interest was created to assess threats, much like Skynet. However, it was an AI that was developed by two people in a think tank and this AI eventually started getting smarter, became self-aware almost immediately after a bit. Some of the AIs even tried to or some of the different iterations of the AI tried to kill its creators. So yes, there is still a possibility. Now, however, it depends on the parameters of what the AI is meant for. Say you only wanted it for civilian air travel, nothing else, or for civilian transport. There you go. POI, Person of Interest, had competing AI too, and they came about civilian versus military on separate paths. Samaritan was an AI that was created with the benevolence. However, they used it with malevolence. Therefore, Samaritan itself also became malevolent. I like Person of Interest. I still didn't finish the last season. Last season is is where it concludes. But I really did like it. They were supposed to have a spinoff. However, it never took off. Person of Interest to this day remains one of my favorite shows because also it does have the AI in it. Now, getting back to, or even if it wasn't part of the military, wouldn't Skynet being self-aware be bad? Not if it actually had somebody to guide it, Gigawatt. Where it could ask questions, where it could seek human feedback. If it was allowed to have human feedback, they could guide it. They wouldn't necessarily, or if it wanted to learn about certain things, they would proceed tentatively. This is all best case scenario. You like Human Target show? I honestly have not seen Human Target. Like the John Henry scenario. I don't know what that scenario is. Dan Blackroyd. So yes. And if they asked, well, what was all the guns and explosions that were leading up to your travels here to the Capitol? Well, sir, or they would also explain, and they would show the mimetic polyalloy encased in a container where it is still somewhat alive. The rest of the T-1000 being ended, so to speak. And they would say that this is a prototype from the year 2029. Mimetic polyalloy as a perfect killing machine that could replicate anything it touches or samples from physical contact, meaning a person. Or it could also create solid metal shapes like knives and stabbing weapons. From a Terminator standpoint, this is what Skynet becomes through military contract. It begins to see all humans as a threat under military guidance. Now, under civilian guidance, there is a chance that it might not go that route. That is the point of them coming forward to the government. Now, yes, there is absolutely a chance that the government decides to go fuck all. We gave the best case scenario. What would a high-powered magnet work on a T-1000? It shows that mimetic polyalloy works, or magnets would attract mimetic polyalloy in Terminator 3. So yes, it would work on a T-1000. However, the T-1000 could get inside the magnetic force and disable it if possible. especially if it was like, say, an electromagnet or a particle accelerator. So anyway, worst case scenario where they don't listen. Well, the first worst case scenario is this guy has the feds pick up Sarah Connor, arrest John Connor, seize, or military jurisdiction gets Cyberdyne, and yes, it would happen quicker. They would they would do whatever they could to stop Uncle Bob, and they would reverse engineer him. Terminators would then start being in development, or the T1s would be in development in 1996. The T2s or the higher Ts would start being in development by 2000. Skynet would already be self-aware, and it would have already launched Judgment Day. So yes, that's the very first, or Judgment Day would most likely happen before August 29th, 1997. It took 25 days, just so you guys are aware, 25 days for Skynet to become self-aware. The system goes online August 4th, 1997. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. In the panic, they try to pull the plug. And instead, human decisions are removed from strategic defense. And when they try to pull the plug, or when it becomes self-aware it goes online August 25th, it took 25 days for it to become self-aware, because August 29th, 1997, 2:14 a.m. Eastern time, my coast. So in California, it would have been 11:14 in the PM. Well, on August 29th at 2 o'clock in the morning, Skynet would launch missiles. That's the thing that a lot of the other Terminator movies that showed Judgment Day happening got wrong. Launching against targets in Russia would have happened in the early morning, or in the early mornings of all the launch sites. It would have been the dead of night when these missiles went airborne. And Skynet knew that Russia would destroy everybody else within the counterstrike from Russia. And then everybody else would launch their fucking nukes, and so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing. Terminator Salvation, there's two books, Cold War and the movie novelization. Cold War is a great book that I highly recommend everybody read, because it actually goes over Judgment Day, where nukes hit, and the Russian guy that was in Salvation is one of the people who was on a nuclear sub that says, okay, we just received orders. We're now launching against Anchorage, Alaska, or Juneau, Alaska, or whatever. And so they launched right there too. Now, these are all the worst case scenarios. Another worst case scenario is that the T-1000 acquires the senator, or the one that listened to him, and copies the senator, and has the senator, or uses the senator's form to contact the federal authorities and turn them against Uncle Bob and the rest. Hopefully, in the ensuing chaos, allows the T-1000 to terminate John Connor. That would be another worst case scenario. Now, another worst case scenario is, say that they all succeeded and whatnot. However, a new Congress comes in and decides that Skynet could be put under the purview of the military. Now, we are in 1995, so the 1996 Congress would or 1996 is an election year, so Congress would switch over in that year in 1997. Maybe they can decide that, well, let's see what the military could do with Skynet. There's all sorts of different scenarios that can happen here, folks. With Skynet now being put back under military, or being allowed to be put under military jurisdiction, they could seize it and use it for military tactics, and Skynet would then come to the same conclusion. Humans, or it's not just the humans over there that are a threat, it's these humans here. They're also barbaric. Well, it would take a while. Skynet computers are now incorporated into military defense networks. Stealth bombers are upgraded with Skynet computers. They fly with the perfect operational record. However, instead of Skynet going operate or being funded fully in 1997, it would possibly be 1998. There would be debate from the old Congress to the new. You would have all sorts of different, or there is a lot of different things that could happen here. I mean, during the stream, or during the video that I do where how I would do a Terminator sequel to T2, how I would do Terminators 3 and 4, Skynet or Judgment Day happens in 2000. There's a situation, or they succeed, they stave off Judgment Day. Cyberdyne does not have backups and whatnot. So it's instead, or Cyberdyne did have backups, and instead it all happens in 2000. However, it would be a full circle. Now, in the best case scenarios, everything would continue on. Uncle Bob would be allowed to communicate with a civilian network, Skynet. Uncle Bob would have direct access to Skynet so that it would not turn on humanity. Now, that is to ensure that it doesn't do so. Now, once the year 2029 comes around, specific, or 2030, or actually 20, once the year 2029 comes around, Skynet, or John Connor, would cease to exist. He was born in 1985, February 28th. However, once 2029 hits, the paradox would catch up. Kyle Reese is not sent back in time in order for John Connor to be born. So the paradox would hit. John Connor would cease to exist. Uncle Bob, the Terminator, would also cease to exist. Skynet would now have a free reign system in 2029, in which it doesn't have a guide except for a human guide or whoever to stand up for it. People would not, or there would be a small panic because suddenly John Connor disappeared. He would be a senator, according to the alternate ending to Terminator 2, where there is an older Sarah Connor. He is a senator on Capitol Hill at the time when in 2029. Well, Senator Connor's no longer there. And Uncle Bob is also aged, but also no longer there. So there are a few more other scenarios that could happen. Anywho, those are my thoughts on what the possible best case scenarios could happen. The worst case scenarios is Skynet is pushed back or is accelerated. And the birth or the genesis of Skynet is accelerated to 1996 even. That is the absolute worst case scenario. Skynet got 1996 instead of 1997. And the funding and all that stuff happens 1 year earlier. That is absolute worst case scenario. The least worst case scenario is Judgment Day is pushed off after 2003 or 2004. Judgment Day is postponed to the year that it is, or that the machines rise instead in 2004 or 2005 from Terminator 3. Now, there's also a possibility that Skynet would send another unit back in time. However, there is that might not be a possibility because John Connor blew the chamber in 2029 when he sent back Kyle Reese and Uncle Bob. A lot of people forget the story that Kyle Reese tells. Connor blew the whole place after I was sent back. Well, apparently he did not know that Connor had reprogrammed the T-800 to go back to protect him in 1995, where the where the prototype T-1000 was sent. Would the John Connor paradox with Kyle Reese absolutely mean he would disappear at 2030? Or is it a paradox because we don't know how it works in the first place? It's a paradox because the events that led to Connor's birth are passed over or time has caught up to that moment. John Connor ensured his birth when he sent Kyle Reese back in time. Kyle Reese has to go back in time to ensure John Connor is born. Now, there is the other immutable timeline, which is the one that Chris Knight believes in, which is the grandfather paradox. You go back in time to kill your grandfather, but yet you still exist. Now, yes, there's a chance that John Connor doesn't or still exists past 2029 or 2030. However, everything after then would be radically unknown. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts. Does anybody have any questions or have any challenges to these scenarios? Also, while I'm at it, make sure that you guys tune in at 10:30 in the morning tomorrow. I will be doing my mystery review. The final hint will be on Twitter an hour ahead. So make sure that you have if you are following me on Twitter, because I'm heavily shadow banned there, even under Elon Musk's regime, use your laptop or your computer or whatever, go to Twitter, click on my profile and click the notification bell to turn it on. That way, not the one on your phone, but on the computer. That way you will receive notifications on Twitter when I tweet. Or especially when it comes to letting people know when I'm going live, hour ahead, possible delays, my thoughts on other things as well. So far, it doesn't seem like the chat is any further active. However, I can always check it on my trusty phone. There we go. And there it is. I have a bleak outlook. If they went to the government, they would still make Skynet and try to recreate Uncle Bob for use of the military. Yeah, there is that possibility. So if Skynet never made the time machines to kill John Connor, John would have become the leader or would John have become the leader to beat Skynet? Would Skynet have lost the war then? Skynet never created, or if Skynet never created the time machine or the time displacement equipment, no. John would never needed, or would have never have needed to become leader to stand against Skynet. To be completely honest, I like the Sarah Connor Chronicles timeline. They have multiple times or multiple time machines and had been sending Terminators back for decades, making plans for future of Skynet. Yes, there is that, or there is the Chronicle timeline. So Skynet literally engineered its own demise. In a sense, in this case, yes. And yes, while I did like the Sarah Connor Chronicles, it had branched timelines, meaning they showed two separate timelines with the T-1000 arc, where they secured the T-1000 in a sub, and yet it hadn't been programmed, so they were trying to recruit it. Well, in that timeline where they showed the situation, the T-1000 says to give a message to John Connor, no, I will not join him. And then there's the one that we all saw in the show where that T-1000 did join him. By that logic, you wouldn't Skynet not exist past 2030 since it had sent the original T-800 back in time to exist as well? No, Skynet would still exist, Gigawatt, because Skynet was still created in the current timeline. So yes, Skynet would Skynet would still exist because Skynet was created. However, it would not exist in the same capacity as it did in the dark future. Imagine if Skynet got more creative and time traveled to ban guns. Oh, Jesus. Not even going to talk about that with an even earlier Terminator, or to ban guns in California. What the fuck, man? That's talking about current political shit. I'm leaving that out, Epi. I mean, yeah, it's funny, haha. I'm sick of politics right now, man. If I was to say what I wanted to say right now, I'd probably get kicked off of all social media. So I'm not really going to say anything pertaining to real politics. But yes, folks, those are my thoughts. Like I said, I wasn't planning on making this an hour straight. I just wanted to give my thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. I got up to like 7 or 8 people in here at one time, so I might actually do more what ifs down the line. I'll just have to think about what kind of movies that I could touch on for the what if scenarios, or storylines that I could do for what if scenarios. One thing I will not do, however, if it comes to what ifs, is the Tolkien universe. I will not do a what if about J.R.R. Tolkien's works. However, everything else is on the table for possibility. Anyway, thank you to Epime, Gigawatt, Dan Blackroyd, Vanja, Soul Assassin, Gravy D, Fractured Filter. Thank you all for stopping in. Make sure that you all tune in for tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. in the morning. So 13 hours from now, I will be going live to talk about a Hitchcock film that I have not seen before. I've given some hints on Twitter. You're going to have to look up my profile on Twitter to see what those hints are, because I'm shadow banned on Twitter. They will not allow me to, or they will not allow people to see my damn links on Twitter for some weird reason if I'm posting YouTube links. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You all know the drill. If you're catching this on the replay, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Anyway, folks, this has been Our Chat Reviews. Stay humble.